This is a brief training demonstration on the correct method of repairing a Bartlett wine press membrane. Bartlett wine press membranes are made out of polyurethane fabric as opposed to some other membranes that are made out of PVC fabric. So we'll go through the process, identify the tools and also show some helpful hints at the end of the video just to make the job a little bit easier. The first and very important process of repairing is to identify the material that the wine membrane is made out of, and the material that you're using for patching are both identical. Bartlett wine press membranes are made from polyurethane fabric, a reinforced polyurethane fabric. The patch kit that is supplied with your Bartlett wine press membrane will also be the same material, a reinforced polyurethane. If you're repairing a membrane other than a Bartlett membrane, it may be a PVC membrane, and PVC and polyurethane don't mix when it comes to patching. The easiest way to tell the difference between a PVC and a polyurethane when you're repairing it is to first get your hot air gun and to heat your hot air gun up to the maximum temperature. So turn your temperature up to full, allow time for the air gun to heat up to full temperature, and here I have a sample of PVC and a sample of urethane, and when they're heated, if we heat PVC up, you will notice as we heat it, one, we get dark smoke coming up from the material, and two, the area where it's being heated is actually turning black and yellow. It's carbonising as we're applying the heat to it. So you can see smoke and it's turning black. If that happens, the material you've got is a PVC and must be repaired using a PVC patch. If we do the same to a urethane and we apply the same temperature, you'll see there that the urethane is melting, but it's not smoking and it's not turning black. And it's going liquid on top, it's getting quite tacky, but there is no blackness and there is no smoke coming off, and that identifies a urethane. So again, a Bartlett membrane is urethane. Other membranes may be PVC or a blend of PVC and urethane. It's important that the patch material matches the membrane that's being repaired. So after identifying which material is which out of your patches and your membranes, the next job is actually do a physical test weld to make sure the materials are compatible. The best way to do this is to actually select a piece of the membrane, such as the flap, or an area that is not in the body of the membrane. We usually use the flap of the membrane, and we'll do a small sample hot weld on that just to check that the two materials stick together properly. So we take a small sample of our patch material and we do a brief tack weld just using the hot air gun. We just do a very brief weld where we heat both surfaces up. This can be done with quite a hot air gun. It doesn't have to be done at a very controlled rate. So we just do a very brief patch just to melt the two layers together, squash them together, and now we'd wait until the heat comes out of this weld. After you've done this quick test weld and the material has cooled down, you can just give that a peel to check that there's a solid bond between the patch material and the wine membrane fabric itself, and we can see there that we're getting a very solid bond that I can't pull apart, so that means the two materials are suitable. So that's the first test. So now we'll set up to do two patches. We'll do one which is quite a small patch, and we'll do another one which is quite a large patch. So the small patch is typical of a small knife cut that might appear from a blade or something like that in a membrane. So we'll do a simple patch over that. It's possible to do the repairs from both the wine side or from the air side. It just depends on the accessibility. If the membrane is out of the press, you can take your pick which one's easier. I like to have a patch on the wine side totally covering the cut edges of the hole so that wine can't get into the exposed edges of where the damage is. So I like to actually do a repair on the wine side, and then on a large hole like this we do a repair actually on both sides of the membrane so that we seal it twice. So we'll start off with a small one like this. The first process is probably to select the patch size for a start. We've got a small hole, small straight nick. You don't need a terribly large patch to cover a small cut like this. In fact, you'll usually get a neater, better quality repair if you actually put a small patch on. I like to have about a half, 3/4 of an inch coverage all the way around the cut. So a small patch like this, I would select a strip of material. Ideally, adjust the strip of material to about the same width as your welding roller. In this case, this roller is approximately 1.5 inches wide. Just reduce the width of the patch to about the same width as the roller. We will then round up the ends of the patch. We find that round-ended patches hold on a lot better than very sharp cornered patches. So just rounding the corners up just makes the patches fit on better. So once we've selected the patch, we locate the patch centrally over the hole, then just mark the area around the patch. And what this does is just give us an idea of the area we must clean, because probably the most important process of the repairing is actually getting the wine or the original membrane nice and clean, ready for the patch. So we know that we've got to have the area within the patch area nice and clean for a start. So the next process is the cleaning process. The first part of the cleaning process is to use a fine steel wool. The steel wool works very well in agitating the surface of the membrane to draw the wine out of the surface of the membrane. The cleaning product we use is methyl ketone, or MEK, and we find that this is strong enough to soften the surface of the material, but it's not that strong that it's going to eat it away too quickly. If we're using MEK, first thing we want to do is we do want to put on eye protection, because splashes in the eyes are no good, and also we wouldn't put on hand protection so it doesn't get on your hands, so we kit up with gloves. We have our gloves on, we have our steel wool, we have our MEK. It's always handy to have plenty of supply of nice clean rags. The process is saturate your steel wool with MEK, like so. A little bit of excess, I've dribbled a bit of excess there, that's okay, it'll just sit there. Now what we do with this is, just in the area we've marked for the patch, is we just gently work the MEK with the steel wool into the area where the hole is or the damage is. And you can see there, that's just a gentle circular motion. It's not pressing very hard, it's just working the MEK into the surface of the membrane. As you work the MEK into the surface of the membrane, you'll gradually notice that the wine comes out and it'll start turning white where you're rubbing. So as you can see, after working it in gently for a minute or so, it gradually cleans up. And now we're left with quite a clean surface area appearing for us to weld on. So now what we need to do, that's actually quite soft. The surface of the material is now getting quite soft. Most of the ground in wine has now been taken out by the steel wool. So now we just mop up the excess MEK. Check that the area is fairly clean. After cleaning up the MEK, you'll find that the surface is now quite tacky. That's probably not a problem, but rather than leave the surface tacky, what we now do is we treat the surface with an alcohol solution. Use a separate rag to what the MEK was cleaned up with. Just soak that quite thoroughly and just liberally spread that over the area where it's been affected by the MEK. And what this will do is it'll stiffen up the surface of the material, so it takes the softness out of the surface of the material, makes it more rigid again. Now that we've done that, we check the size of our cleaned area versus the size that we've cleaned to make sure that they're matching. In this case, they're matching okay. And the next process is to work on the welding process.